Welcome to the Sangra podcast. I'm Amy Watson, and I'm here today to chat with Vancouver-based Baljit Sangra, the director of Because We Are Girls, which aired on the closing night of the South Asian Film Festival of Montreal. The film is a documentary about three sisters seeking closure by pressing criminal charges against their cousin, who allegedly raped them while growing up in an immigrant Indian family in BC. The film is available online to stream on the National Film Board of Canada website for free. But while the film was shot and edited before COVID happened and aired at some festivals before the shutdowns, the plan was never to air it at digital film festivals around the world. Still, Baljit says there are some silver linings to working in film right now. So, to talk about producing and distributing films during a time of social distancing, as well as her recommendations for Vancouver restaurants, because this is the Sangra podcast, aka the Happy Hour podcast after all, here's Baljit Sangra. Hi, Baljit. How are you today?
I'm great. Fabulous. Yeah.
What are you drinking for our happy hour?
I am drinking a kind of a homemade margarita, some lovely tequila, ice, and some fresh lime juice. No sugar added.
Oh, nice. Good. Mine's kind of similar, but a lot of sugar added. It's a dark and stormy, so rum based. But I minced in a lot of fresh ginger. So cheers.
Ooh, cheers! Cheers!
Okay, so I'd like to start off with a little bit of a lightning round, just to break the ice a little bit. I had no idea what kind of drink you would prefer. You're based in Vancouver. I don't know where your drink preferences come from because you probably have traveled a lot for your work. But what in terms of flavors do you like the best? That's kind of what I'm going for here. So sweet or spicy?
Spicy.
Salty or savory?
Savory.
I guess they can be both, but
yeah, they can be both. Yeah.
Still, a favorite meal growing up?
Curry chicken.
And
with roti.
I don't want to stereotype it, but Indian style curry, not Thai style. I assume if it's with roti.
Oh
it's
yeah,
Indian
style curry. Yeah.
From a particular area, like northern, southern, or from a particular region.
Punjabi pretty style? Typical curry chicken. Yeah.
Okay. Favorite film growing up?
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's too hard. I don't know. My favorite film.
It's a good thing I don't have a timer
Star
on
Wars.
these.
I love Star Wars.
Ah, yeah. Which one? Which one? Which episode?
The first three.
You have to answer that, right? If you're a filmmaker. And then let's get back to food. You grew up in Vancouver?
Yes.
What's your favorite Vancouver restaurant or restaurants?
Some of my favorites, they're kind of just close to me in neighborhood, and they're really good. So I love that they're in my neighborhood and I can just like walk over. Call quickly, like, do you have a couple seats? I'll be there in 10 minutes. So there's Savio Volpe.
Oh, so good.
That's so good. That's really close to my house. And there's Les Faux Bourgeois, which is just maybe 5 doors down from there, 6 doors. It's on the same little block. So that's fabulous. There's a great Ethiopian restaurant in my neighborhood called Faisal's. And what else? Well, I love, Cipino's in Yaletown. Always good. Italian, fabulous. Vidges.
I had to ask you about Vidges later too, so I'm glad you brought that one. You feel good about that place? I mean, it's such an iconic Indian restaurant in Vancouver, so I wanted an insider's perspective.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's kind of always been for special occasions. You know, we've gone for birthdays or sort of like celebrations. It's one of those, you know, when you're like with friends and it's your birthday and you're like, oh, pick a restaurant, anyone, you know, our trade, and often it gets picked. So that's always a good sign.
Yeah.
But
sure.
I haven't, and they have, it's been a while actually. I guess with COVID, I haven't gone in a while. But they used to have a great summer happy hour on the rooftop, which is really nice.
I love a good happy hour.
Right? And a rooftop and snacks and nice drinks on a hot, sunny day. So that's nice.
Wow. I miss that for reasons that are unrelated to COVID and just being the wrong season right now.
And Minami. I think it's Minami. It's a Japanese restaurant in Yaletown. So good.
Okay. Sounds amazing. Yeah. All of those things sounds amazing. Vancouver is such a good food city. What's your favorite food city in the world?
Oh my goodness. You know what? I've never really, Vancouver is really good. I really noticed that when I do travel, but I love, I mean, Toronto is always good. Like everybody always has great, yeah, and I've never been disappointed. There's so much cuisine from like all over the world. It's amazing. Um, where else have I gone? Oh, Mexico. Mexico, the food is amazing. Yeah.
Where were you?
I was in San Miguel, San Miguel. Yeah, great restaurants, and Mexico City, great restaurants, and a city close to San Miguel. I forgot the name right now, but yeah, the food like really authentic Mexican. You know, where they really roast the peppers and all those sauces, like just really homemade, not sort of what's been so popularized over here. It's just incredible. Yeah, the freshness. Oh, love it.
I want to get into talking about the film because I could talk about food with you for far too long, and food is an element in the film, and we can chat about that a little bit later. But it's a really hard story to watch. It's very difficult to watch just because you see the struggle of the three daughters, the three women, dealing with their family, dealing with the legal process, and trying to get kind of a closure or a sense of justice out of the situation. How did you first hear about the family in the film?
Well, one of the protagonists in the film, she's a friend of mine. So I was aware of the story since around 2007. Yeah. Well, I had a film that had just come out and we had gone for lunch just to catch up. And I had met her actually through work. I had a TV show at the time and she was designing a line of clothes. So we just met that and we stayed friends. So, but cut to me making a documentary, we have lunch and she asked me, she's like, have you ever considered doing a film on sexual abuse in the South Asian community? And I'm like, well, that's an amazing topic and it's so powerful, but what would my access be? Like, how would I tell this story? And then she disclosed to me that she and her sisters were survivors of sexual abuse.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how it sort of started, or that's how I got to know of the story. Yeah.
When did you start filming?
Not until 2015.
And it
Yeah.
you finished filming and editing around when?
2018.
And then
Yeah.
you submitted to a bunch of festivals after that, and then you premiered at Hot Docs in Toronto, right?
Yeah, we premiered in Hot Docs in 2019. We actually got accepted. Our launch would have been Vancouver Film Festival in 2018, but there were some legal issues, so we decided just to wait until those got resolved. The accused had applied for it's called like a Jordan application, basically saying that his charter rights were violated because the case took so long. So he had filed that. So the legal team thought because there's an action pending, maybe it's best just to wait and see what's going to happen. So we just withdrew out of that festival. I mean, sadly, and we just sort of waited. Yeah, and they needed to make sure other sort of ducks are in a row, just to make sure that we're legally okay with releasing the film. So we had to hit pause, and then yeah, in 2019 we premiered at Hot Dogs.
Okay, so it's not like the pandemic kind of messed up your plans too much, and you had already released in several festivals and gotten some feedback, and you already were planning to be on the National Film Board website where you are now. But specifically, I heard about you because you're supposed to be at the South Asian Film Festival of Montreal. You were, but just in a very different version. So when you were making this film and when you were applying to different film fests, were you thinking that this would go through in a digital form and everything would be fine and your viewership would be the same? And if not, what's changed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we've tried. I mean, I've gone to a bunch of festivals and the sisters have come to a bunch of festivals. So we've really tried to have a lot of representation with either all of us together or some of us or just me. So it's been a pretty incredible experience being able to travel with the film. And we definitely, I had definitely planned to come to Montreal when they reached out way back before the pandemic. I was like, absolutely. So yeah, you just have to pivot really when all that happened. A lot of festivals, Montreal was later in December, but a lot of them, were going to be live like in May, and we were going to go. I hadn't even bought tickets. We were going to be in one in San Francisco, one in LA, in May. And yeah, so they were kind of waiting as things were rolling out. Maybe can this happen? Can this not happen? I was actually in Europe. We had premiered our first European show was in Glasgow at the Glasgow International Film Festival, and then we were gonna. That was in March, and we were gonna have a screening in April at a London festival. So yeah, so I was gonna go to that, and then all my family and friends are like, "You better get home. Things are closing down. Flights are being canceled. Just get out. You got to come home." And I reached out to that festival, and I'm like, I have to go. I don't think I could wait, because I thought I'd have a little holiday in the middle, travel around, hang out in London, and then go to the festival, and see more films at the festival because it's so much fun, right? And they have parties and all of that. And at that time, they still hadn't canceled it, and they're like, "Well, our advisory is that things are okay." And I'm like, "Really? Well, I think I gotta go." And they ended up later having to cancel it, but it was a very confusing time for sure.
No one wanted to cancel anything if they didn't have to cancel anything.
No.
But since you went to some festivals with the film, and then you've done the digital version, I assume a couple times at least by now.
Yes.
What's the difference in the feedback you're getting? Like, what kind of audience size would you have expected if it weren't digital? And what's the experience like when you go live versus digital?
Yeah, it's been sometimes you can have we did really well live, to be honest. I mean, we lucked out. We had a publicist as well, so that's really helped, and social media promoting, working with the film festivals, sometimes getting press, like we got press in Glasgow. That all really helps.
Yeah. Do you get numbers though? Do you actually get the numbers on like?
Well, you just go, and when you're there, you can see if it's a full house or almost full.
Yeah.
So you physically can see it
with the digital.
So that's
version,
amazing. Digital, you don't know.
They don't send you an email like with your stats after.
Well, you could ask, but I mean, what I found from some festivals, like if you're in it, they'll have it available at a certain date, but available throughout the whole festival. So in that way, theoretically, more people can watch it, and it's accessible everywhere. They're often geo-blocked, but it'd be by country, sometimes by province. But lately it's been like Canada-wide, or we had a film in the Trinidad Film Festival, so that was geo-blocked to the west, the Caribbean countries around. So in that way, you have a bigger audience. I know a lot of festivals have done really well pivoting digital, because they've made the films available in such a big area. Like I've been able to watch films, at TIFF, and I've never gone to TIFF. So and I saw films at Imaginative, and I've never been to Imaginative. So you have this access, which is amazing. And then you get Q&As, and you can see a good number of people popping up. They have filmmakers Q&A, so I've done those, and it's been good questions. And then people have reached out to you after on social media, saying, I saw your film at this festival digitally, and here's some of my thoughts. So it's been interesting.
That's essentially what I did too, because I got the press release and I saw that you were supposed to be at the closing night, and I thought, okay, I better check out what this film is. And then because you're on the National Film Board website, you can stream it for free there. So how is it doing there, and how's that partnership been? Because I assume people are watching more movies right now.
Yeah. Apparently, NFB's had the most traffic ever during the pandemic, and you could say that for a lot of streaming services. But NFB's done really well.
It's cheaper than Netflix.
Yeah, and we've been doing really well. It was released through the NFB. The sort of the films that got the most views in 2020, and we were number 3.
Wow.
So for the whole year, that's pretty amazing. And we did when we launched on the NFB, we did a Q&A with myself and the sisters, and it was moderated by journalist Mira. Bane. So that was good, and we got a lot of people, and that was on Facebook just to kind of get it hyped up that we're releasing.
Yeah.
So, but it's only available on the NFB in Canada. Yeah, outside of Canada, you have to catch it on on Amazon,
Okay.
Amazon Prime.
Okay.
And another plug, we just found out on Amazon Prime, we have had. They can't tell you how many times it's viewed, but they can tell you how many minutes it's been viewed. So it's 18 million.
Wow.
So and it's an 85-minute film, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
So it went on Amazon Prime when? What was the date?
It was on NFB first, and then in 2020, maybe a few months back. Yeah.
Was that distribution through the NFB or were you? Oh, okay.
Yeah. They launch a lot. They have a space on Amazon. Like there's a lot of their titles also available on Amazon, and we're one of them.
Oh, you lucked out. That's amazing. Because I would imagine it would be pretty tricky to negotiate those kinds of contracts and to get on there otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot available of the NFB titles, but yeah, no, lucky. Like, I mean, they really look at each film and what works best and how to roll it out. And, we made some sales too in some countries. So sometimes in those license agreements, you can't make it available in that country, So yeah, it's been good. I mean, I'm shocked because there's so much, when you go on those big platforms, there's just so much content. Like unless it's word of mouth or because I think we've been in festivals and people have been talking about it or sharing about it, that's directed a lot of traffic to Amazon. No, sometimes when you click on, you'll see Amazon originals and what's trending. So sometimes unless you know a title to find it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Unless it's already doing well, they're not necessarily going to put the money behind promoting it or the effort.
Yeah. So a lot of this has definitely been through word of mouth or other sort of publicity we've been doing or from festivals and all of that. Yeah.
Well, it is a really moving film. I don't want to give too much away about it, but there's one scene that's really stuck with me when the three daughters are in their, I don't know if it's their childhood home, but their parents' home. And they're talking to their mom and their dad, and they're sitting across on different couches from their parents. And the daughters are explaining how traumatizing this was for them and asking why, specifically to their dad, why their dad didn't stop it and didn't say anything afterwards, even to the cousin, to the alleged. And the father's answer just kind of, it breaks my heart so much, and I'm sure broke the girls' hearts too. You were there shooting that scene, I guess?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You were there for all of the shooting?
Yeah. Of course, yeah.
What were you thinking when they were saying that, when you were watching that happen?
Well, it started out just sort of, the family getting together. It was a tea, everybody was just, checking how you're doing, and they were in the court process, it was coming near the end, I think after the next time after we filmed, we were actually in Williams Lake for the verdict. So we're at that moment, emotions are running high, and and I think, in that conversation, they were all together, and, the sisters were really busy, in their lives, and then also taking up time to go to court, and court meant traveling to Williams Lake, and that's, making a lot of changes in your life, your work, and then you go up there, and sometimes there were adjournments, so, they're really stressed out, and then I think, when the conversation kind of went around, where they're at now, and why didn't one of the sisters, why didn't you do anything, and then when they didn't really feel that the dad answered them or didn't do enough, the emotion just escalated, and it was a real verite scene. We only stopped once to change a battery, and it was just emotions were running high, and you can see that when you see that scene, it's like you're literally in the room, and some things are said and the other person is really shocked by what that said. It could be a sister sitting next to him, like on the couch, you see one sister just hearing some information for the first time, and she's just crying, and it was a very, very raw scene, very, very verite. Lots of emotions were running high, and I think it was the line where the father said, you have some responsibility too.
Yeah.
And that's when that really triggered one of the sisters for sure.
It's just so
And then, right.
shocking to blame these
Yeah.
girls who were adolescents and say you were at fault in some way, in any way.
And then that's where the discussion is like, how could, we were young kids, like
Yeah.
10, 11, so. And then the father does say, I do think, I am proud of you, only, who could take on such a task, right? So like
Mm.
what they're doing in terms of, going to court and everything like that. So you really see, yeah, conflict. He's conflicted, and they want to be heard, and you really see this sort of intergenerational conflict.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And as an outsider, I wonder how much is cultural to them. Like, what were they thinking? Were they worried about judgment within their community, or were they just that was something that they didn't talk about, or is it more individual? Like, I don't want to impose any stereotypes, but I'm curious about your perspective on the situation.
Well, I think I think, that comes up in that scene too and throughout the movie because, the parents are really, a product of their generation, of their culture, of their values. And, and I think the sisters understand that, but, but you're going to get this clash, right? And I think, the parents always, have probably felt, we did the best we could, and had this gone out or what you find out in the film that they had told the mom much earlier, and and then the mom's reaction back then was like, don't tell anybody. She was really worried about having her daughters married, but that's really a big responsibility, traditionally of
Yeah.
parents is to have your kids married, so they're really very protective of that. So yeah, and I think just kind of where the sisters are in their life, they're grown, they have their own careers, they have
Mm.
children.
Yeah.
I think having that kind of support and being independent really, makes this possible too. I
Mm.
think, them coming out and pursuing justice, say 20 years earlier, would have been way more challenging.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you think that right now, with more people at home, and we're hearing more in the news about, potential for domestic abuse, for people being taken advantage of in different ways, do you think more of these situations could be happening now with families, whether they're in immigrant families or not, anyone isolated at home?
100%, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, they a lot of like crisis lines have said, the volume of calls have gone up, and organizations like, that work with domestic abuse, physical abuse, any kind of abuse against women, they're busy. Transition homes are full. It is really, really heightened. It's made the situation very difficult and harder. Even with, just generally, they say, more people have even gone for divorces
Yeah.
during COVID.
Yeah.
So I think,
Yeah.
just being confined in one space, it's challenging for sure. And if there's already issues, like around abuse, partner abuse, that's only going to heighten it,
Yeah.
make it harder.
And then
Hmm.
the end of the film, where you're talking about the legal issues and not quite knowing what the end was going to be, because I shouldn't, like, not really, the verdict was still out. The verdict was in, but there was um, uh, what was it called again when he filed a Jordan? What was
Yeah,
it?
well, it was like I don't know the exact formal thing, but it's a precedent. It's called a Jordan application. You could apply for that, basically saying that a trial should be finished within a
Right.
timely manner. And I'm not exactly sure
Right.
what that amount of time is, but it did
Yeah.
it exceeded that.
So
Yes.
he wasn't arguing against the verdict itself. He was arguing against the fairness of the length in
Yeah,
receiving that
yeah, of his
verdict.
charter rights.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So how do you feel then about the justice that can be achieved by former victims based on that example of justice?
Oh, it's really disheartening. Absolutely. After, when he won that Jordan application or his appeal, right? Based on that, yeah, it was just devastating. Like, I couldn't believe it. And a petition was launched. The sisters started a petition and we got thousands immediately after the screenings. We would update people as we were screening the movie.
Well, you
So
want to
this film
know.
was
It's
going
like
on, but things kept changing too
right.
legally. So,
Yeah.
obviously audience is like, well, what's the latest or what's going on? And then
well,
people would
it's
just
like
be
you
really
watch the film and then you never get to know the ending. It's like you want to know the ending.
and people, yeah, live audiences, when we told them like, he won this and we're hoping for an appeal, people were just shocked. Because you just feel as survivors you feel victimized again, for sure. Like, who does justice serve, right? I mean, they were always ready to go to court, and they put a lot of their lives on hold. He often called in and said, I'm not well, I want a new lawyer, or this, all these other these type sort of excuses, I feel, and it delayed the trial for sometimes over a year and a half, because it's really hard to get court time where everybody's available. So if you only going to meet in 1 year a handful of dates, and the person disrupts that and says I can't make it, then they have to look towards the next year to make it up. So time, it just drags on, and then later it ended up going against them, right, in a way. Sad. I really hope that just the justice system has to do something so because I think more and more people would do this um, uh, as a defense tactic, draw out a case and then just say, go for a Jordan application saying, oh, my rights were violated because the case took so long. So there's got to be a way to move these cases faster, and and acknowledge that the impact it puts on survivors. It's really, really tough. It's arduous. And, these women, your sisters, they had each other. But I think if you're alone, it'd be very challenging. I think just going through that whole process, I can see why a lot of women, don't go through with it. Or if they do, maybe sometimes feel they need to withdraw. Like, it's just really arduous. It's expensive. It's taxing. It's emotional.
I mean, the most horrible part to me is that at least they're not going through this thinking, well, nobody's going to believe me, because at least their sisters were also allegedly raped. So that just...
Yeah, he was guilty 4 out of 6 charges. So, but the good news is there was an appeal by the Crown. It just happened in November. So we're waiting to hear what that is. So the Crown did appeal his application, him winning the Jordan application. So there was an appeal, and that's an appeal is at the appeal court, so that's multiple judges looking this over. So my hopefully prayers are that something will work out here. Absolutely. But I don't have an update of what they've said, but it did get an appeal.
Well, previously you directed and produced the was it Many Rivers Home? A personal story that focuses on seniors in assisted care. Thinking back to that film now, well, it looks at the end story of life, basically. That was for Omni TV. When you think back to that film now, how do you feel about the situation that seniors living in care homes are facing at this moment?
Oh, it's so hard, it's just devastating, when the pandemic at the height, at the beginning, that's where it was so most devastating. And so definitely they got hit very hard. And to the fact that, a lot of people weren't able to spend time with their loved ones, parents, kids couldn't come in. They were very isolated. I think, geez, I have friends who have parents in care, and, they can't go inside right now. It's still on lockdown, right? Because there's been another wave, and, I think it's been really hard. And I have friends who've lost, their parents in COVID, and, not being able to say goodbye. It's only through like a FaceTime or through a nurse who's there, communicating, how you're feeling. So, I mean, that's devastating. You can't imagine not being able to hold that person's hand or be in that room or kiss them and say goodbye, or just be there, and surround them with so much love. So that's really hard. Absolutely. I have no words, but I mean, yeah, it's impacted people that I know that I'm close to. So it's, yeah.
I imagine as a filmmaker, you can really, when you say you can picture those scenes, I imagine you can actually picture the shot and picture that zoom in on the hands and picture those faces. And I know you work in a lot of social justice films, and you're drawn to those kinds of themes. What are you working on now? Have you been inspired in any way during this time to create?
Yeah, I've been working just mostly on developing ideas, more writing, some research, putting it together, applying for grants. And they're different. I've got some documentaries that I'm applying for. I see if hopefully I'll get those grants.
The nice thing is
And
funding is
also,
still there. It's pretty amazing.
yeah, and there's been some like COVID relief funds for artists, so that's been really great. I'm applying for those. But yeah, and I'm also writing a script too, so a narrative script, sort of a coming of age story. Yeah, it's sort of set in the 80s in East Vancouver, South Asian family, sort of trials and tribulations of a family just trying to survive, but also dealing with a lot of uh, expectations from their families back home,
Yeah.
while they're trying to make it in Canada and having kids and assimilation and just sort of growing up in a really, working class, very diverse neighborhood, and just sort of those different stories through, all the family. But one of the main threads is a young girl. She's like 11,
Have
and
you
it's sort
have
of
you
seen through her eyes.
have you done a full length fictional work before?
No, no, I've
Oh,
done a couple
exciting.
shorts, so it's been a while, but I think it's a really good time right now. There's been a lot of focus, a lot of conversation that definitely in the industry,
Yeah.
uh, by filmmakers like the BIPOC, by saying, we need to be included in these stories and be
Yeah,
represented.
definitely.
So, and the, in my career, this conversation has really never happened as much as it's happening now in terms of representation and who's attached to projects, who's telling what stories, you know, things like that. There's some opportunities there, so I definitely want to be ready for that. And so I've been really trying for that.
That's really exciting. Just to know that, yeah, you can tell those stories. But in terms of the actual filming itself, with social distancing, what are film crews doing? Like, do you have to bubble with your entire film crew if you're shooting? What's going on in Vancouver?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of protocols, COVID protocols. I know, like, if you're working, on like a film, like a narrative film, one of the Netflix or whatever that's being shot in Vancouver, they get tested a lot, a
Yeah.
lot of social distancing. Even when they have meals and stuff, they have like multiple tents. So there's like, before you'd all kind of be more together, like this is,
Yeah.
so they made all these different kind of arrangements around, a lot, obviously masking up, social distance, lots of testing.
Yeah. But there's still lots of
Yeah,
filming going on.
there
Oh, wow.
is.
Okay.
And then you get called if somebody does test positive and who was around them. So you're not even sharing meals together. People are
Okay.
more in their offices
Right. So they don't have to
or
shut down the whole
they're,
production. They can just
no,
cut off a
no.
little finger.
Well, what can you do? Yeah, but I mean, I'm not working on those films. I have in the past. So for me, I know in documentaries, there's like the documentary community has gone out there and kind of put together like protocols for shooting, and that's available online. COVID-19 through, you could look at through the doc. I'm part of Documentary Organization of Canada, and it's a really, really great document. But I've people have the mic on a stand, the sound recorder quite far back. That
Right.
you have to like readjust everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of zoom lenses and a lot of high sensitive mics, I guess.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Great for specialty rentals, I bet. So you're a co-chair at Doc BC, which is part of Documentary
Doc.
Canada. Yeah, of
Yeah,
Doc. Okay.
correct. Yeah, yeah.
So
Documentary Organization of Canada. Yeah.
yeah, and so there's funding. Are there a lot of kind of young filmmakers applying, or do you feel that young filmmakers are being cut out right now because of the pandemic?
No, no, no. Like Doc is like offers programming and advocacy work just so like to represent documentary filmmakers on a larger landscape. That with broadcasters or whoever, that there's just to advocate, for just viable, group in Canada that have, done a lot of work, important work. But no, I think right now there's a lot of programs for young filmmakers. We're doing one in Doc BC called Breakthrough, and it's for emerging filmmakers to help get them ready to pitch, hook them up with mentors, classes, work as a cohort, and then go to market with your program, like try to get some money. So I mean, we're doing that. So there's a lot of programs, like training, and a lot of them are focused, saying, we really, it's open, but there's a real focus also on representation from, underrepresented groups. So I think also regionally too. So it's a good time, really. Yeah, absolutely. And the film industry, if people just wanted, like, they're really busy, right, in Vancouver. I mean, I'm sure, if you're working in the industry, like, in a union job, you're probably very busy. There's a lot of work. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think
But I
that's
think it's a good time right now. They've had to reallocate some of the COVID money. A lot of productions got halted, things like that. Halted money because of COVID, I'm saying. And so there's been some opportunities, I think, for more filmmakers in a way, in terms of support and opportunity, and just sort of looking at the industry. So
wow.
yeah.
I like that
Yeah.
you're looking at it optimistically. It's so easy to look at the downsides, like, oh, this didn't happen, or oh, this had to get shut down, or something like that. But there's a silver lining there, so that's nice.
Yeah, I think a lot of the places that offer funding have really risen up or offered something, and they know that this is really tough for creatives out there. So what can we offer? What can we help out with? If we had a deadline that was maybe next year, could that be moved up sooner so people can maybe get those funds and work on development now? So I think all of those kind of conversations were happening after COVID, and also some people probably had to wait a little bit, for some of the production because of what's going on. And I think organizations have been really accommodating. I think because travel is very restricted, and so
Yeah.
everybody's got to help each other out.
You got to make friends with foreign film crews and just get them
Right.
to do
and
your shooting.
yeah, and reach out to people for contacts, or this is my dilemma, does anybody know a shooter in like California or LA, or how do I deal with this? Or yeah, you really feel like a community out there too, like when people put out a question. And I'm on a lot of different, like, groups on Facebook, and Doc has a thing called listserv where you can pose a question to the membership, and anybody can help you out. So that's really been helpful.
I'll put up a link to that so people can access it.
Oh, absolutely.
So I just want to close by coming back to food stuff. In the film, Because We Are Girls, food is really important in that family, like in a lot of Indian families, like in a lot of Canadian families of every origin. What kind of food did you grow up having for celebrations, for birthdays, for family dishes?
It's kind of funny because when we grew up, we were eating, like, I would say Indian food at least 3 to 4 times a week for sure. So on a special occasion, usually the kids, me and my brothers, we didn't really pick Indian food because we were like getting it. And so, and that food was mostly vegetarian, right? So a treat would be like, my mom, a curry chicken would be like once every couple of weeks maybe, or fish, or you know what I mean? Like, or Canadian food, whatever, pasta, lasagna, my mom was trying to incorporate or learn a lot of the other kind of dishes that, that are, yeah, that are popular that kids like. So I remember she even took like a cooking class, and tried different recipes or get recipes from neighbors. So and she'd always put her own little take on it. Yeah, so like, for as a family, we saw often, for birthday parties, especially say for my parents, they'd always like to go to like this Chinese restaurant that's in the neighborhood because it has that big round table, and that Szechuan food that's a bit spicy, but you could see everybody, and it can be lively, and kids can come, and it's bustling kind of a restaurant, right? Not you're very family oriented. And some restaurants are very, exclusive, and you bring kids in and they're making noise and people are looking over, like, So yeah, I have good memories, going, having those kind of meals. We always, like, growing up, on our birthdays, we were always allowed to pick a restaurant of our choice. So that was always a nice way to try different food and compare. And so, I'm a family of five, so that's 5 birthdays right there. So, you get to go try some new restaurants and
Yeah.
go out as a family. So that was always been really fun. And, from some things you really love and your parents are like, oh, I don't know if that was for me. And some things that they really love, you're like, But it's a really, this is a great city to try everything.
Yeah, like if you were like 11 and you're like, oh, mom and dad, I'm so angry at them because they did something, I'm going to ask for sushi because I know they're going to hate it.
Right?
Like, did you ever do that?
Well, yeah, and sushi, like my parents never really liked sushi, but they would have the other things like the noodle dishes and like teriyaki and my mom would just be like, oh, that's raw fish. You're eating pieces of raw fish. We're like, yeah, and it's delicious.
Yep.
So
sure is, mom. She's like,
yeah,
why
they never
are we
tried
here?
it. Yeah, neither of my parents tried sushi. They're just like, no, I was just gonna go for, but there's, those restaurants, those Japanese restaurants. There was one that we used to go a lot to as a family. My nieces used to be their favorite. Where they kind of do Japanese, but on the big,
like the teppanyaki, like the big grill.
Yeah, and they throw it up and they do all these special effects with the knife. But anyways, at this one that's here called Osaka, and when they have kids around that, they do like serious entertainment.
Big show. Yeah.
Big show, and they're just like, ah, then he'd squirt and then light a match or a fire, and they're
all
just
the
like,
flame goes up, and yeah.
So there's so those kind of restaurants that I have good memories too, just because the kids are just like, oh my god, and they're so entertaining. Yeah, and the food is good too.
Yeah, this is probably not the first place you're going to go back to once dining rooms are open again. So is there is there one place that you're going to go back to when you can?
Oh my goodness. Geez. Maybe try like a new kind of place that's maybe like cozy that you might not want to go to now with COVID, because
right. Somewhere you can kind of snuggle up and get like you have to whisper and lean across the table, and like I don't even remember how that intimacy feels in a restaurant. Like I think I would be a little scared at first, and then you get over it.
There's like a restaurant I've never been. It's like in a heritage house in Yaletown, Villa Lupa or something. I don't know. Like, I wouldn't mind trying something like that. That looks really intimate, after COVID. That's kind of quaint and has little corners because it actually is like an old house. Wow. I don't know if I would go there like right now. No, but yeah, geez.
Well, that's great. I'm excited to get back to Vancouver someday because there's so much to eat there, and I hope all those restaurants still exist. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
I'll put up a link to Because We Are Girls on the National Film Board website, and I look forward to seeing everything that you do in the future.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Cheers. You too.
Thanks so much for listening to the Sink a Set podcast. If you love hearing from people who love food and drinks as much as you do, please support the podcast however you can, whether that's by leaving a review on iTunes or a comment on YouTube or recommending the audio version on Spotify or Pocket Casts to your friends. If you want to sponsor the podcast, that's another great idea, and it goes a long way to keeping this production afloat. Reach out to me on Instagram at Miss Watson, that's Miss Watson with 2 T's, or on multiculturiosity.com, where you can also find recipes and more about my other food writing and journalism work. If you have recommendations for future guests for this show, you can reach out in the same places, and you can find links to everything Baljit and I mentioned in the show notes wherever you got this podcast. Until next week, drink something delicious wherever you are.